Hey there, folks. Welcome back to the OU Insider YouTube channel. This is Quick Slants. Parker Thune, Jesse Crittenden. It is another Tuesday, which means another breakdown of Brent Venables' press conference, a look back at the Cincinnati game, a look ahead to the Iowa State game. We're going to hit a lot over the next several minutes. And Jesse, I think the natural place to start is with this matchup that's taking place on Saturday. It was the very first thing Venables addressed at his presser. And this is an Iowa State team that no matter how they've looked on paper coming into a matchup with Oklahoma, they've always given the Sooners a good game in the Matt Campbell era.
Yeah, they have, and I think it's sometimes it's some of those games it's kind of been a surprise. In other games, you knew going in that it was going to be a really tough game. And honestly, Parker, one of those games, I think last year's game, I know it wasn't in Norman, but last year's game in Ames was a really good game for a lot of it. It was a defensive battle that if it hadn't been for a Zach Schmidt fake field goal touchdown, maybe things go a little bit different. So at least in the Matt Campbell era, Iowa State has been a thorn in OU side, whether that's in Norman or whether that's in Ames.
Now, a guy that had maybe his most pedestrian game in a victory last year was Oklahoma's now fifth-year senior quarterback, Dillon Gabriel, a guy who there's a certain contingent of the fan base that is uber critical of Gabriel. They kind of crawled back out of the woodwork this past weekend against Cincinnati when he missed a throw here, missed a throw there. Still, all in all, was spectacular. Did lose a fumble, but threw for over 300 yards, accounted for both of the offensive touchdowns Oklahoma scored on the day. And here's what Brent Venables had to say about the performance from his Hawaiian Southpaw quarterback this past weekend in Nippert Stadium.
Played well. And does that mean he played perfect? Nobody that got on the plane played perfectly, and that's never expected. But he did a lot that was fantastic in the game, and gave us a chance to win.
So there you go, Jesse. Dillon Gabriel gets Brent Venables' stamp of approval, which is really the only stamp that matters in the grand scheme of things. But thoughts on Gabriel's performance against Cincinnati and looking ahead to a matchup with an Iowa State team that was able to curtail his impact with his arm last year. What do you have to see from Gabriel this Saturday that maybe you didn't see to the extent that you would have liked against Cincinnati?
Yeah, I mean, I think through 4 weeks, it's been hard to complain too much about Dillon Gabriel. I mean, he's top 15 in the country in nearly every statistical category. He's been one of the country's most efficient passers. He's been really good for the most part at taking care of the ball. Like, that can be true, and also true that there were a couple of throws against Cincinnati that he probably needed to make, had a couple of receivers open. Those are passes he needs to make. Again, it didn't bite him against Cincinnati. But if you miss those throws against somebody else, does another team take advantage? Like, that can be true, and also still acknowledge that Dillon Gabriel through 4 weeks has been really good. And also, this OU running attack just hasn't been nearly as effective through 4 weeks this year like it was last year, which I think puts more pressure on Gabriel. But I mean, again, Gabriel finished the Cincinnati game with over 300 yards passing on 68% completion percentage. It's hard to complain about that too much. Going into Iowa State, though, I do expect Iowa State's defense to have an impact on this game, and I think that's going to start with trying to limit Dillon Gabriel's passing ability. I'm sure they're going to see that OU has struggled a little bit on the ground through the first 4 weeks. I'm gonna venture to say Iowa State's game plan is going to be trying to force OU to beat them on the ground. So it'll be interesting to see how Dillon Gabriel responds to that.
Yeah, look, Gabriel has not been flawless by any means. No quarterback is. Everybody's going to make mistakes. They're all human. Every so often you get a cyborg like Caleb Williams that is just cut from a different cloth. But Dillon Gabriel has been everything Oklahoma has needed him to be to this point through 4 games. And the Sooners are 4-0. So you want to look at the one statistic that really matters. You got a 4 in the win column and a 0 in the loss column. And Brent was asked earlier today about some of the factors that have gone into the 4-0 start for Oklahoma and what has been a very impressive 4-0 start, a win and a win against the spread in every single contest. And one of the things he cited was an additional measure of buy-in from this team in 2023 that wasn't quite there in 2022.
I don't know if it's I think there's just more guys that are bought in. I think it's a higher percentage. And when I say bought in, I don't. If you're not bought in, it's not like we had a a bunch of bad guys by any stretch, but doing everything that we ask you to do is being bought in. And then that's on the field, that's off the field, that's in the classroom, that's in the community, that's on the practice field, that's in the weight room, that's in nutrition. It's, just having a good attitude.
So it's a pretty simple recipe, Jesse. You get guys bought in, you get guys that are executing their assignments, that know their assignments, know the scheme better than they did a year ago when everybody was coming up to speed at pretty much the same place in what Venables had integrated on the defensive side of the ball and what Jeff Lebby had integrated on the offensive side of the ball. The Sooners, all in all, have played some pretty good football through 4 weeks. Now, there is, talking to both players and coaches early this week in post-practice sessions, there is a very clear measure of respect that is doled out to Iowa State because of the way that the Cyclones have continually played Oklahoma close year after year after year after year. And one of those guys that it pointed that out, acknowledged, hey, look, this is never a team we could look past, is Woody Washington, a guy that was has obviously worn the Oklahoma uniform for going on 5 full seasons now. He knows as well as anybody that the Cyclones are simply not a team that you can take a victory to the bank against. So with that said, we know, most everyone knows, Iowa State's got some challenges that they're facing right now. The gambling scandal before the season, the offense has been stuck in the mud at times so far in 2023. They did get a really nice performance from quarterback Rocco Becht in a victory over Oklahoma State this past weekend. But all in all, you look at Iowa State, Jesse, very much the same way I think you looked at Cincinnati and SMU. You don't want to diminish what they are and what they're capable of as a football team, but objectively, this is an opponent that Oklahoma should have their way with on Saturday.
No, it is. I mean, with everything Iowa State has gone through, I mean, I think the one thing that has carried over from last year to this year has been that defense. Although it's not, I mean, Iowa State's defense last year was easily the best in the Big 12, one of the best in the country. I don't think that has carried over as much, but you still look at the defensive statistics. The guts are still solid there, but overall, from a talent standpoint, especially offensively, I mean, with the way this OU defense has been playing so far this season, I mean, I think Iowa State's going to be hard pressed to score much at all. I mean, Iowa State's 13th in the Big 12 in rushing defense. They're 12th in passing defense. They're 13th in scoring offense as a whole. They're averaging 21 points per game. Parker, I think this is a game where OU simply overwhelms them. I don't think the offense is going to be able to do everything they want. I still think this is a solid Iowa State defense, but this is a game that I think OU's defense in particular simply overwhelms the Cyclones.
With the knowledge, Jesse, that Iowa State is not a fantastic offensive team, what can you see or what can you hope to see on Saturday that will provide some legitimate validation to the notion that this Sooner defense is continually improving and perhaps has even taken that next step into the twilight zone beneath the elite category?
Yeah, I think the main thing and what this OU defense has done really well through 4 weeks is they're not making mistakes. They're not making a ton of mistakes. They're not shooting themselves in the foot. They're not committing a bunch of silly penalties. There's not a bunch of coverage busts. I think you just want, against an Iowa State offense that you should dominate, this OU defense, I think you just want to see them play good, fundamentally sound football, make Iowa State beat you, because that's already going to be a struggle for them anyways. But we've seen how good OU's defense has been in the red zone this year. We've seen how good they've been on third downs. They've been really good on fourth downs. They've been really good stopping the run. I think you just want to see those kind of trends continue through the first 4 weeks. Where they've been good, they should continue to be good there. And again, don't give Iowa State easy opportunities. OU's been really good so far at limiting those self-imposed mistakes. That should continue this weekend.
Now, Venables was asked virtually the same question after the game on Saturday and this morning in his press conference. You feel like this defense is playing at or close to an elite level yet? And both times he said, no, we're not anywhere close. And that just goes to show you, with everything Venables has been through as a coach, with his track record, his resume, he knows elite defense when he sees it. And the Sooners have been good, but they're still in his mind. And I think it's fair to acknowledge. I think it's somewhat evident when you look at some of the big chunk plays Oklahoma allowed against Cincinnati. There is room for improvement. There is room for growth. But one of the things that is particularly encouraging for Oklahoma fans right now, nationwide, as they watch the Sooners on Saturdays, is that you're getting contributions from young players that came in with a ton of hype, were highly regarded as prospects, and they've validated the hype with their performance to date. Two of those guys that certainly fit the bill are the two 5-star defensive signees from the last recruiting class in safety Peyton Bowen and defensive end PJ Adebawora. Did I say that right? I don't even know. I don't even know how to say it at this point. Adebawora. There you go. That's how he said it. But I actually asked Brent earlier today about those two and whether he's impressed, surprised by what they've shown thus far, or whether he expected it, given that they were 5-star football players. And this is part of what he had to say about Peyton Bowen and PJ Adebawora.
I like to promote in the recruiting process, your butt's going to get in the back of the line like everybody else. Them stars, those awards, all the wins, your tackles, your interceptions, your passing yardage, whatever it is, you can't bring it with you. It doesn't travel. And you can bring guts and toughness and commitment and consistency and mindset. Those things will travel, but you're going to get in the back of the line. You're going to earn everything that you get. And those guys embrace that. So I think that's because of that, it has helped them transition, pretty well and have some success.
Now, no doubt, Jesse, those are two guys that are going to once again be given the opportunity to play a lot of snaps this weekend against Iowa State. Reggie Pearson banged up. He didn't play against Cincinnati. That opened a bit more of a window for Peyton Bowen. And objectively, he performed well in the share of the snaps that he was given. The same can be said for PJ. In fact, Brent Venables said it on his coach's show Monday night. He actually went to Miguel Chavis on the plane after watching the film and said, hey, we need to get PJ in the game more. So how much longer, Jesse, you think, based on the level of play that those two guys are demonstrating that they're capable of right now, even as true freshmen, even as guys with just 4 games under their belts respectively, how long is it before we start to see a lot more of those two?
Yeah, I think we're going to see that this weekend, Parker. I mean, a few different reasons why. I mean, Brent Venables has alluded to it time and time again, not only his admiration and respect for Peyton Bowen, but for how well PJ has played. He's mentioned more than once now that that PJ is playing himself into an elevated role, and he can, and his answer to your question earlier, he said nothing about what PJ's been doing is a surprise. None of it's shocking. And I think if the whole regular season is kind of centered around the Texas matchup coming up in less than 2 weeks, where I think you're going to need PJ and Peyton to play a lot of snaps. To me, not only because if they're playing on the field, they've earned it, but if you're looking ahead to Texas, this seems like the perfect matchup against an Iowa State offense that this OU defense shouldn't have too many issues with. Get them on the field, get them some snaps, because that's the thing. PJ still played 22 snaps against Cincinnati. Peyton Bowen played 29. I think both those numbers are going to go up. They should go up, and they should go up this weekend.
And one thing we know about that Texas game, not to gloss over Iowa State this weekend, but looking ahead to October 7th, one thing we know about the Texas game is that everybody, coaches, players, support staff, everybody involved on the OU side of that rivalry series, when those two teams hit the field at the Cotton Bowl, they're not screwing around for a single second with personnel, with scheming, any of it. The best guys are going to be on the field at all times. And I always think back to Danny Stutzman in 2021 when he was just a true freshman. He had dislocated his elbow early in the season. He was still wearing that big old brace, and he gets the call against Texas in the 4th quarter of the Red River Showdown, comes up with a huge sack of Casey Thompson that gives Oklahoma the ball back with the opportunity to go and tie that football game. And that was all the evidence you needed. And I know it was a different staff at the time, but it illustrates the point that when that game arrives, when those two teams hit the field, it really doesn't matter. Seniority, all that goes out the window. The guys you trust to make the plays are the guys that are going to get the call against Texas. And so for both Peyton and PJ Adebawora, I think they've certainly proven thus far that they're worthy of more snaps against a team like Iowa State. What's going to be all the more interesting to me, though, is when that Red River Showdown rolls around, are those two guys that are getting as hefty of a share of the snaps as we saw this past weekend against Cincinnati, and that we likely will see this coming weekend against Iowa State. For Jesse Crittenden, I am Parker Thune. That is it for this installment of Quick Slants, but we have tons of content coming your way throughout the week on this channel. You know, you guys can look forward to the Oklahoma Drill podcast, the Under the Visor pregame podcast, OU Insider Live on Wednesday night, but also keep an eye out for Field Vision from our boy, Coach Brian Clinton. Did an outstanding job breaking down the film on Iowa State and what the Sooners can expect to see. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Let us know in the comments section if there's any content that you would like to see added to this channel's rotation, and we'll do our best to bring it to you. Until next Tuesday,